With one lap remaining at Talladega, Shane van Gisbergen had a top 10 finish locked in and secured. 10 seconds later, his car was being crushed violently from both sides simultaneously, and the team radio went completely silent. What unfolded across the following 3 seconds is something he will be replaying in his memory for a very long time to come. Let us walk through exactly what happened at Talladega Superspeedway during the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series Jack Links 500. Shane van Gisbergen, the New Zealand-born driver piloting the number 97 Trackhouse Racing Chevrolet Camaro, was delivering a genuinely strong and competitive afternoon. He had positioned himself in a spot that would have secured an excellent finishing result, and everything around him appeared to be trending in exactly the right direction. Then the final lap arrived, and everything transformed within just a handful of seconds. Here is precisely how the crash developed. Ryan Preece, wheeling the number 60 RFK Racing Ford Mustang, got loose underneath him. That means his car began sliding in a completely uncontrolled manner that he had no realistic ability to correct or manage. His car rotated and spun directly across the nose of Van Gisbergen's Chevrolet. SVG had absolutely zero escape route available. Before his hands could even begin processing a corrective input, he found himself compressed between two cars simultaneously. Preece was making contact on one side, while Austin Dillon in the number 3 Richard Childress Racing Chevrolet Camaro arrived on the opposite side. The experience resembled getting squeezed between two large vehicles on a busy highway, except occurring at full superspeedway racing velocity. Christopher Bell, driving the number 20 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota Camry, also got dragged directly into the developing incident. When everything finally settled, Van Gisbergen was officially classified in 20th position. He was the second-to-last car remaining on the lead lap, which was absolutely not the conclusion he or his team had envisioned when the final lap began. But the most important update arrived over the team radio almost immediately afterward. Van Gisbergen transmitted those 2 words every fan and every crew member desperately needed to hear. He confirmed he was okay. He then climbed out of the wrecked number 97 car completely under his own power without any assistance required. Now, to properly understand how the entire sequence began, we need to rewind the clock by several laps. With 7 laps remaining on the raceboard, things were already becoming genuinely unpredictable at the front of the field. Eric Jones was running 3rd place, looking strong and competitive in the number 43 Legacy Motor Club Toyota Camry. But then, Carson Hocevar delivered what the racing community refers to as a hip check. That specific term describes one car making contact with the side panel of another competitor. The resulting contact sent Jones sliding helplessly into the inside retaining wall just before the tri-oval portion of the circuit. Officials initially allowed the race to continue under green flag conditions while monitoring whether Jones could extract his car from the situation and rejoin the racing surface. It quickly became apparent that his car was firmly embedded in the infield grass with no realistic prospect of continuing, so the caution flag was displayed with 7 laps still showing on the board. When that yellow flag appeared, Chris Buescher was leading the field in his number 17 RFK Racing Ford Mustang. Carson Hocevar occupied 2nd position in the number 77 Spire Motorsports Chevrolet Camaro directly behind him. Van Gisbergen was maintaining 9th place at that moment, with his Trackhouse Racing teammate Ross Chastain running immediately behind him in 10th. Competition resumed with 3 laps remaining to decide the entire outcome. Buescher and Hocevar shared the front row for the restart, with Alex Bowman and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. positioned directly behind that lead pair. Van Gisbergen restarted from 9th, and despite genuine effort simply could not find any path to advance forward through the tightly bunched field. Up at the very front, the battle was reaching maximum intensity. Hocevar was committing absolutely everything available to him in pursuit of Buescher and the race lead. The 2 competitors raced wheel to wheel and door to door as they thundered through the tri-oval section with the checkered flag almost within reach. Either driver carried a legitimate and realistic chance of claiming the victory at that specific moment. Then arrived the decisive moment that determined the entire outcome. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. made contact with the rear of Buescher's car and got him loose at exactly the wrong moment. That single push was all the opportunity Hocevar required. He cleared Buescher cleanly and accelerated away to claim the race victory. Just like that, Carson Hocevar transformed himself into the newest NASCAR Cup Series race winner in official competition history. Hocevar demonstrated absolutely no restraint whatsoever when it came to marking that achievement with an appropriate celebration. He hung himself dramatically out of the window of his car, completely soaking in the magnitude of the moment around him. He then positioned his car directly against the outside retaining wall and executed a full-throttle burnout to permanently mark his very first Cup Series victory. It was a celebration that nobody present at Talladega Superspeedway that afternoon will be forgetting anytime particularly soon. But while Hocevar was absorbing every second of that celebration up at the front of the circuit, the situation at the rear of the field was playing out as an entirely different and considerably darker story. Van Gisbergen found himself trapped directly in the heart of that final lap carnage. The crash that collected and destroyed his afternoon carried absolutely no fault on his part whatsoever. He was simply positioned in the wrong location at the precise wrong moment when Preece's car rotated across his path with no warning. Let us work through the complete official finishing order so you have the full and accurate picture of how the race concluded. Carson Hocevar claimed victory in the number 77 car after completing all 188 scheduled laps. Chris Buescher crossed the line second, just 0.114 seconds behind the winner at the stripe. Alex Bowman delivered a third-place result in his number 48 Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet. Chase Elliott rounded out fourth position with Zane Smith completing the top 5 in the number 38 Front Row Motorsports Ford. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. finished sixth, a somewhat ironic result given that he was the driver whose contact with Buescher ultimately opened the door for Hocevar to claim the win. Ross Chastain, Van Gisbergen's Trackhouse Racing teammate, secured 7th. Austin Cindric crossed 8th. Noah Gragson collected 9th. And Kyle Busch rounded out the top 10 finishers. Further back in the official results sit the drivers who got swept into the Van Gisbergen incident. Christopher Bell was classified 17th. Ryan Preece finished 18th. Austin Dillon was right behind him in 19th. Van Gisbergen himself was officially scored 20th. Eric Jones, whose wall contact with 7 laps remaining set the entire chain of events in motion, finished 23rd, running 1 lap behind the leaders. Several enormously prominent names experienced genuinely brutal afternoons. William Byron was classified 35th, running 69 laps behind the race winner. Bubba Wallace, Ryan Blaney, Cole Custer, Joey Logano, and Kyle Larson all finished grouped at the very back of the official running order 74 laps down. Talladega has a well-established and somewhat notorious ability to produce exactly these kinds of outcomes for even the most talented and experienced competitors in the garage, with the extraordinary speeds and relentlessly tight-pack racing creating conditions where massive incidents can develop and escalate in fractions of a second. So here is the honest summary of everything we witnessed at Talladega on Sunday afternoon. Shane Van Gisbergen delivered a smart, disciplined, and competitive race performance throughout the entire afternoon. He drove intelligently, maintained his composure through multiple caution periods, and successfully positioned himself for a genuinely valuable top 10 result heading into that final lap. Then, through absolutely zero fault of his own decision-making or execution, he got collected in a multi-car incident that ended his afternoon in the most painful and frustrating manner imaginable. The visual of the crash itself was genuinely unsettling to observe. Getting contacted simultaneously from both sides of your car at superspeedway velocities represents one of the most dangerous and frightening scenarios any driver can face at a facility like Talladega. The cars circulate in such tight proximity at such extreme speeds that a single car losing control can trigger a cascade that collects multiple other competitors before anyone has any realistic opportunity to react and avoid the situation. For Van Gisbergen and the entire Trackhouse Racing organization, this outcome is a legitimately difficult result to process and move past. A top 10 finish at Talladega represents a strong and meaningful performance by any realistic competitive standard, and watching that result dissolve in the absolute final corner of the absolute final lap is precisely the kind of heartbreaking outcome that stays with a driver and a team well beyond the immediate weekend. But this is the nature of superspeedway competition, and these situations arise even when everyone involved does everything correctly. The single most important reality is that everyone walked away from the incident without serious injury. Van Gisbergen confirmed his physical well-being over the radio, and that confirmation is what genuinely matters beyond everything else when the dust settles. Race cars can be straightened, repaired, and rebuilt for the following weekend. The drivers behind the wheel are irreplaceable. Carson Hocevar, meanwhile, gets to carry the greatest moment of his young professional career forward with him permanently from this point. The journey from receiving a checkered flag for the very first time to celebrating that achievement with a wall burnout in front of a packed Talladega grandstand is exactly the kind of memory that defines an entire career and never fades regardless of what follows. The way he physically hung himself out of that car window after crossing the finish line communicated more clearly than any words could exactly how profoundly significant that moment felt to him personally. The Spire Motorsports organization earned their celebration too. They have invested consistent hard work and organizational development in pursuit of exactly this kind of moment, and Talladega delivered it. even accounting for the role Stenhouse's contact with Boucher played in creating the opportunity of the victory in NASCAR competition regardless of the specific circumstances that produced it. For Van Gisbergen, the path forward involves reviewing the available data, extracting whatever lessons can be identified from the weekend, and directing that energy toward the next race on the schedule. The Kiwi has demonstrated across multiple occasions that his talent level is more than sufficient to compete at the very front of NASCAR fields on any given weekend. One unfortunate and entirely unavoidable incident at Talladega does not alter that fundamental reality in any meaningful way. He will return to competition, and he will be channeling the frustration from this specific afternoon directly into the motivation required to convert it into a victory somewhere down the road ahead.